Hi there, it's Jody. This channel is my journey back to art, and some of it is about well-being. I discovered adult coloring books about 12 years ago. I came across all kinds of blogs and images related to adult coloring books back then. And I was in college at the time, so I didn't have time to consider it. I also noticed some of the content was more about patterns, which didn't interest me as I used to be an artist when I was younger. So it kind of felt silly coloring someone else's art. Fast forward 12 years later, I'm sick with what feels life-threatening, visiting different specialists to figure out if my condition is long-term. And I'm told not to be active due to my condition, but what I can say is it wasn't easy, and not being active, visiting my garden, playing with the dogs, or playing video games greatly decreased my happiness. I started to think about what I could do that had less mobility, that didn't cause pain, and I also wanted to do something that wasn't having me constantly in front of a blue screen that would increase eye strain. I started a couple of adult puzzles, and it actually helped me more than I would have imagined. I was able to work my mind, and I'm not sure why, but that reduced some of the pain and the worry I had about my health. After I finished about a dozen puzzles, I wanted to move on to some different types of puzzle books. While I shopped online, I noticed a couple of puzzle books that had samples that contained coloring pages. That got me thinking, maybe adult coloring books is something else I should try out. Let me tell you, looking for the perfect adult coloring book is an absolute rabbit hole. Especially if you can find discounts from $1 to $4 with gently used coloring books. Then if you look at some of those discount book websites, there's just a whole other rabbit hole for the older books not found on Amazon. So I purchased some adult coloring books based on my interests. I like things like warriors, mythology, fantasy, animals, gardens, forests, and things like that. I also like sci-fi stuff. While I waited for those books to arrive, I also discovered 2 other rabbit holes: coloring books you can print from Etsy and university coloring pages that offered free pages. Needless to say, I don't want this to be a solo journey. I think it will help me in some way to express my new love for this hobby, even if it's just me seeing my coloring pages come alive on video. But perhaps it can help someone else that feels the same way I have. Started off with this adorable book called Backyard Birds by Sun Prairie Publishing, but my interest in this book was mainly because I wanted to be out in the garden. I also figured that perhaps I could use this book as an example on how to draw my own songbirds. I had every intention of coloring each page in the order of sequence, but then I struggled at coloring it because I realized the paper and the coloring pencils didn't get along at all. And I also wasn't happy with the lack of vibrancy in the red color pencil in the pencil set. So I ended up setting the coloring page aside as I checked online about solving the issue I was having. And then I jumped into another rabbit hole of the vast array of coloring pencil brands, softcore, oil-based, and so much more. I watched tons of videos, and it seemed like the Collage coloring pencils would do best with my small budget to start this new hobby. I also purchased a tiny pack of Prisma Premier coloring pencils and a small pack of Arteza coloring pencils, and then I compared the 3 sets. Each of them provided a different experience based on the paper I was using, especially if the paper was more like cardstock and had a heavier weight. Of course, there are all kinds of coloring supplies I also discovered, from sharpeners, gel pens, and much more, but I just put those on my wish list for a later time. But while I had some coloring pencils to play with, I started to feel overwhelmed about the coloring books I did have. I had listened to multiple colorists on YouTube talk about the regret they had in the earlier coloring pages they had done. That began another rabbit hole for free coloring pages. I printed off some to check out because I wanted to try some blending techniques before I dedicated coloring in other adult coloring books that I had. My second coloring page was this free one I found online I actually took this challenge on because I was intimidated by the mandala type of coloring books out there. While I wasn't attracted to the illustrations, I felt like this was the closest thing that I would be interested in doing. But I do love seeing trees at a distance, especially when they're alone. And this one had this intriguing, almost like a serpent skin crawling up the bark of the tree. For this page, I was actually eager to consider a palette, and then I kind of wanted to work at blending in each weave of the tree. I also decided to have a skin color as the heart, because I thought maybe if a tree ever did have skin, it would look like that. I wanted the leaves to be subtle, that way I could notice the bark of the tree. My third coloring page was from the Farmer's Garden coloring book by the Coloring Bookshelf from Etsy. I really enjoyed coloring in the barn and the cart, along with all the wood and the autumn-colored sunflowers, but I think I struggled with the rest of the page. This was my first grayscale coloring page, and I had to use my own imagination by doodling, filling in the areas that were super blurry on the right side of the page. There was what looked like a cloud on the right side of the shed, so I just made up a vine-like tree of some sort. The bottom area here had nothing but blur, so I kind of drew in some purple and blue flowers and shaded it in to blend it out. I was really frustrated at this point. There was a point in this last hour of coloring this page that I just wanted to take the page and crumble it, but I had put so much effort in it, and I just wanted to finish it. So I kind of rushed it and actually really liked the way it turned out. The next day I was sharpening the coloring pencils and realized actually I do have a work in progress. So I reluctantly forced myself to go back to the first filled coloring page with the cardinal birds. Not to punish myself, but I felt they would be good now that I had some different pencils to try out on the page. So this time I took the same approach as the last two pages. Create a color palette, test out the coloring pencils to see if they are the desired colors. When I returned to the page, it didn't look as bad as I recalled. I also realized that I wanted the wings to be a bit lighter after checking real-life cardinal images. So I finished the page, and it wasn't the best coloring, but I actually felt so much better that it was done. So that's how it started, my love for adult coloring books. There's a lot more on my journey. I have some different coloring pencils I want to check out. I've got multiple coloring books on my wish list, so I've given them that wish list to family and friends, and I'll be setting a little money aside to increase my amount of books that I'd love to share with everybody. And I really do think this has been helpful for me. I have so much more to share, so stay tuned for more videos as I've colored quite a few pages since I started this journey. And I do want to find more ways to restore my well-being, whether it's art, coloring books, or something else. I hope this video brightens your day as it has mine. Until next time.